Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Now in today's video what I've got for you guys is a bit of a double feature. We're going to be taking a look at two main things in today's video. And as you guys can probably tell from the title, the first thing we're going to be taking a look at is installing Windows NT version 3.51 here on the $5 Windows 98 PC. And then once we actually get that installed, we're going to be taking a look at the very first publicly available version of the Windows Explorer user interface that we've all come to associate with Windows. So the Windows Explorer, the taskbar, the start menu, that was widely popularized with Windows 95, but believe it or not, there was actually a preview version of that user interface available for Windows NT 3.5 users. So we're going to be taking a look at that. It's called NewShell, and you guys can probably tell that from the title as well. So we're going to start off with Windows NT 3.51. I have the CD inserted into the computer's DVD drive right here, but we do have to actually boot off of a floppy disk. So we're going to go ahead and restart the system right now, and as it is booting up, I'll actually tell you guys a little bit of history about Windows NT 3.51. Alright, so here we are loading into the very first portion of the Windows NT 3.51 setup. This might look familiar to any of you guys who have installed Windows 2000, Windows XP. I mean, this is the same standard Windows NT setup process. The only difference this time around is that the first portion of this setup is actually contained on 3 floppy diskettes. I've got the other 2 right here that we have to actually load off of before we can really copy any of the files over from the CD. Now, Windows NT 3.51 itself was released on May 30th, 1995 as the third version of Windows NT ever released. And you see it's asking us for version 2 right here. We'll go ahead and pop that in. So let's go ahead and put in disk number 2. So yeah, it was the third version ever released. The first one was 3.1 and the second was 3.5. So this is 3.51. Now, you might be asking yourself why exactly they decided to start with version 3.1 as the first version. That was just to really correspond with Windows 3.1, which was out at the time, and essentially make it the business release of Windows 3.1. Now, this particular version came in both workstation and server releases. What we're taking a look at today is the workstation release. Now, NT itself, there's a bit of an interesting backstory behind Windows NT in that it actually traces its roots back to IBM OS 2, which I actually did an installation video on OS 2 Warp 4.5.2 on this computer. You can check that out up in the cards. But yeah, this was actually at the time when Microsoft was co-developing OS 2 with IBM, which is actually how the project got started. OS 2 was originally a joint development project between IBM and Microsoft, and it was intended to be the successor to DOS. But to make a long story short, over the course of that development cycle, Microsoft and IBM ended up going their separate ways, and Microsoft actually left the development of OS 2 entirely to IBM in 1992 when they officially left the project. Now, Microsoft had been developing Windows NT, which at the time was called OS 2 NT, and it was going to be implemented into the next version of OS 2. Microsoft ultimately used what they had created to actually create Windows NT, which, as we all know, ended up becoming way more successful than OS 2. So that is your very brief history lesson on Windows NT 3.51. Now, I am going to talk a little bit more about NewShell later on, but first we're going to get Windows NT installed here. So you can see that the system is actually identified our IDE CD-ROM drive, which is important because we do have to actually load off of that, and it's going to go ahead and load that device driver. Now you can see, check that out right there, loading device driver, OS 2 compatible file system, HPFS. Alright, so it's finished loading all of those drivers there. Now we're actually presented with this screen right here, which basically says, where do you want to install Windows NT from? Now we have the CD-ROM edition of Windows NT here, but they also released a version on 3.5-inch diskettes that you could, just install from that instead. But just to make it a little bit easier, I got the CD-ROM version, so we're going to press enter to load, and it's going to go ahead and load the CD-ROM file system device driver, and it's actually going to now come up and say, okay, where do you want to install Windows NT 3.51 to? So we already have a Windows 98 installation on this computer, so we're going to go ahead and actually delete that. So we're going to press delete and press enter, and we'll press L to delete. So now we've got this unpartitioned space. We're going to install on the unpartitioned space, and we're going to format it using the ntfs file system. So you can see that's actually not going to work. It is letting us know that it cannot format the partition because it is too large, and this is actually not even the full capacity of this hard drive. This is like an 80 gig drive or a 75 gig drive. This is an 8 gig partition partition, which I created using MS-DOS when I installed Windows 98. There was a newer version of DOS that actually supported this larger, partition size. So we're going to go ahead and press enter to go back to this screen right here. We're going to delete the partition that it created, and we're going to go ahead and actually create a new partition, and we're going to make it, let's just go about 2 gigabytes. So 2048 megabytes. We'll press enter to create that. And now we do have all this unpartitioned space that we're not going to worry about. So we're going to install on this partition right here. We're going to format it using the ntfs file system. And as I mentioned earlier in one of my videos, we basically have the exact same thing going on here, where I really think there's a hardware issue with this DVD drive because it essentially stops reading files from it. You can see right here that the disk or CD-ROM you inserted may be damaged, so it says press enter to continue. It'll prompt you to insert the disk. Now I have to, well, let me just show you what happens. If I press enter here, it'll say that it's damaged, right? If I go ahead and actually eject the drive, and then I reinsert the disk and press enter, and then press enter to insert the disk here, now it'll actually read files off of it. So there's definitely something off with this drive. I did mention this in a previous video. Basically what happens is after a period of inactivity, it essentially stops reading files off of the disk. And it wasn't even really reading files off the disk initially. It was just, like the floppy disk was in use, but the CD drive was inactive. So yeah, I never had this problem with the old CD drive that I had in this computer, but ever since I upgraded to this DVD drive, yes, I've been having that problem. It's not the end of the world because I'm still actually able to, get it to work, but it is a minor inconvenience. So I might have to look into getting yet another DVD drive, or just put that CD drive back in. So it is asking us right now to remove the floppy disk that's inserted in drive A. We're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to restart our system. So we're going to go ahead and put in our name here. We'll go ahead and put in Michael, press enter, and we're going to continue. For our computer name, we're going to just call this 98PC. And hit continue. Language and locale, we're just going to do English US, which is fine for us. We're not going to set up a printer. We're going to just click on, or do we have to type in a printer name? Oh, it says click cancel. Okay, we'll click on cancel, which we're not really concerned about because we don't have a printer set up. Did not detect any network adapter cards. We do have one, but pretty sure there's no driver available for this specific version of Windows, so we're going to click on continue. And right here it says, before you begin, since we're almost finished up here, it says, thanks for choosing Windows NT Workstation. Please take a moment to fill out your registration card and return it to Microsoft. And for a password, we're going to, do we have to put in a password? We do have to put in a password. Oh, we can just press OK. So let's just not enter a password. For a local user account, if you want to cancel setup using a local account, yeah, let's just add one. Let's just put the username as Michael, and we'll click on OK. So we have the admin account and my account. Now it's going to say setup wants to know the application name for edit.com. That's the MS-DOS editor. And yeah, you could see from that brief moment there that, like I said, the interface is going to be identical to Windows 3.1. So it has found the following video adapter in your machine: VGA compatible display adapter. Use the controls to select the size and number of colors for your display. So we're going to click on OK. We'll see what this basic driver supports. Only supports 16 colors. And it only supports 640 by 480. Well, we don't really have many options there, so we're just going to go with that. And because Windows NT 3.51 is not a DOS-based system, we're not going to load into DOS first like we do with Windows 3.1. It's going to load right up into the operating system. This is the closest thing we have to a boot screen with this release of Windows. This is build 1057, if you were wondering. It has found our one system processor. And type of file system is FAT, which is interesting because I specified NTFS. Oh, I guess it's actually going to convert the file system right now. Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing. Alright, so here we are. We've got the Control-Alt-Delete screen. We're going to go ahead and press Control-Alt-Delete to log on. We're going to log on to my account. We'll press Enter to log in. Now, obviously, we have the Control-Alt-Delete screen in this version because Windows NT is once again a business-focused release of Windows, so it did support multiple user accounts and domains. So now you're going to see that there are a couple of additional programs in here, and also most of the references, to Windows have been actually changed to Windows NT. For example, the Windows Setup, as it was called in Windows 3.1, has been changed to Windows NT Setup. We've got Windows NT Help introducing Windows NT. And you can see we also have this little user icon on the majority of these program groups down here, basically signifying that it is a program group for me personally, for my user account. And then we also have this applications folder over here, which has that little computer icon because it is a common item there. So just to demonstrate how this works, I can go into the accessories program group, and let's say I wanted to move the calculator over to the main program group. So I can do that, and then I can actually log out of here. We'll go ahead and log off of our session, and then what I can do is press Control Delete and log into the administrator account. And now when I go into the accessories program group, you'll see that the calculator is still there. Obviously, the administrator and every other user on the system has the ability to create their program groups the way that they want. They can arrange the icons whatever way that they want, and it'll only affect their user account and not anybody else's, which is definitely necessary if you're using a shared system. Now, obviously, I'm sure most of you guys watching know what the program manager is. You know how it works. You're probably interested in hearing about what this whole NewShell thing is. Well, the NewShell it was officially known as the Shell Technology Preview, and it was actually the very first publicly released implementation of, as I said before, the Windows Explorer interface. So the Explorer itself, the Start menu, the taskbar. Now, while beta builds of Microsoft Chicago did have these same UI elements, they weren't available to the public. This was actually available, like Microsoft offered this to people who used Windows NT 3.5. It was actually released before 3.51 here, specifically 4 days before this was released on May 26th, 1995. That was the very first version of this. So yes, there was a second version of NewShell. We're going to be taking a look at that in a moment. We're going to focus on the first version right here. So we're going to go ahead and go over here. Now, to actually get the NewShell installed, we have to run this shupdate.cmd, so we're going to go ahead and do that, and we should be presented with a command prompt. So when we run this, we get a little bit of information about the program right here, and it says this preview is intended to enable software developers and vendors to test their applications on both Windows 95 and Windows NT version 3.51 platforms. This user interface will be integrated into the base Windows NT product and made available in a future release of Windows NT. The date of this release is to be determined. Now, ultimately, that became Windows NT 4.0. NT 4.0 basically implemented Windows 95's user interface, and it was released in 1996. So this was released a year before that to essentially allow software developers to actually test their applications with the upcoming interface. So it does say right here that the Shell Technology Preview has not been fully tested and should not be deployed in production environments. There is currently no official Microsoft Product Support Services support available for using the Shell Technology Preview on Windows NT version 3.51, and it does mention CompuServe right there. This was actually made available through CompuServe. That was one of the ways you could get it. So we're going to go ahead and press enter to continue, and right here it kind of tells you how you can report a problem. The email address was ntbug@microsoft.com. I wonder if that's still in use. It says if after installing the Shell Technology Preview you wish to remove it, you can run this command right here, which is basically the same shupdate.cmd just with a /u switch. So we're going to press enter to continue. It's going to say if you've read this statement and you still want to install, press Y, and it's going to go ahead and copy those files. And it does make a backup, as you can see. So it's finished up here. It says the Shell Preview has been installed. It does once again mention how you can uninstall it if you wish. We're going to press Y to reboot, and it's going to go ahead and reboot the system for us. So we're back here at the login screen. We're going to go ahead and press Control Delete to log on, and we'll log into the administrator account. You probably see right there that it was actually running some conversions. It was actually going to convert the program groups over to Start menu folders. So here we are in the very Windows 95-like interface. Now you'll notice there are a couple of minor differences, mainly with the sizing of certain things like the Start button and the clock over here. There is no lock the taskbar feature, so we can just freely drag this. Now, unlike earlier builds of Chicago, you cannot actually drag the taskbar wherever you want and just kind of have it contained in a window. You can only snap it to the top, left, right, or bottom. But there is no locking feature. What you can also do is actually resize the taskbar if you want. You can even drag it below the default size, which is going to make it, basically like just a little bar down here where you won't actually have access to the Start menu or anything. So we'll go ahead and just, resize that to its normal size. The start menu itself is actually somewhat different. You see it says Windows NT Explorer here on the side. The colors are a bit different, but we can go into things like programs. You can see we have all of our program groups here have now been converted into start menu folders. So we have all the same programs. We can launch like the clock if we want to. So there we go. We've got the clock. We can put that down here by the other clock. And so here is our implementation of the Windows Explorer. So we can go into the C drive here. You see, just like in Windows 95, it's going to open up in separate windows for each folder that you open up. So there you go. So yes, overall it looks very, very close to Windows 95. And we can go to Help and About Windows NT. It's going to open up the same thing right here. Now you'll notice it actually starts to identify itself here as version 4.0, which is interesting because, well, this isn't 4.0. This is version 3.51. Version 4.0 didn't even exist at this time. I assume it was in development. Windows NT 4.0, like I said, will be released in 1996. So that's actually very interesting. I did not realize it actually changes the version string there. Recycle bin is here. That was a feature introduced in Windows 95. We can, of course, go into control panel. You know, this is going to bring up the Windows 95-like control panel. It doesn't actually make any modifications to any of these programs, obviously. Like all these settings in here, like the display settings, is going to still be just like it was in Windows NT 3.1. This is mainly just an interface modification. So it's going to change, like I said, it's going to completely replace the program manager with the taskbar, start menu, and Windows Explorer, which is definitely pretty cool. So this is the very first version of it. Like I said, there are two versions, and we're going to go ahead and actually take a look at the other version here. So first thing we're going to do is actually uninstall, and see there's the DVD drive becoming inactive again, so we will reinsert that disk, which is basically I just eject the tray and then, you know, reinsert the tray, and now we'll be able to actually read stuff off of it. So yeah, the first thing we have to do is actually run, which I actually need to open up a command prompt here, so we can type in cmd, and you see we've opened up in NewShell, so we're going to run, the command is, let's see here, sh update. So we're going to run sh update /u, and that is going to come up with this right here. You see it now says uninstall. Press Y to uninstall the shell preview. We'll say yes. It's now going to uninstall everything and restore our program manager. So it's been uninstalled. We'll press yes to reboot. Now you'll notice that the Control-Alt-Delete prompt here has actually been changed back to the program manager style window. You guys probably noticed that it did change when we installed the shell update. So we're going to go ahead and go back into the file manager here. We're now going to go to our D drive and into the NewShell 2 folder. So we'll go ahead and go in here. It's going to come up with this message right here once again, where it's going to say this is only a preview. This isn't intended to be used in a production environment. We're going to press any key to continue. We're going to press any key to continue once more, and yes, we're going to continue with the installation. Now, this version of NewShell is actually kind of interesting because it was released exactly 16 days before Windows 95 launched on August 24th, 1995. So this is coming from a time period where Windows 95 was pretty much, nearing the end of its development. I mean, it had 16 days left until it was going to be released. So the development was, if it was not already completely done, was very, very close to wrapping up. So we're going to go ahead and press Y to reboot. So we'll see if it looks any different. We'll see if some of the sizing stuff is different, like the sizing of the start button. We'll see if we have features like locking the taskbar. And yeah, we'll just see how it compares to version 1.0. So we've logged in here, and you see we actually have a big change right off the bat, and that is we have a new icon. We have the My Briefcase icon, which this was a feature introduced in Windows 95, the Windows Briefcase. So yes, this feature was actually available in this preview release of NewShell as well. Now the sizing of everything still actually looks exactly the same. We can actually do the exact same thing with the taskbar. We still cannot lock it. We can go into properties here. Now you'll notice, interestingly enough, this right here looks like a screenshot from Windows 95. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's a screenshot from Windows 95. You can see that the sizing of the start button and the clock over there do look a little bit different from this image up here and what we actually have. That's kind of what I was talking about before. So we can, this is where you can actually customize the start menu. So we'll go ahead and go into the start menu. See, it still says Windows NT Explorer. The colors do look exactly the same as they were previously. And yeah, once again, we have our program groups converted into start menu folders. So we're going to go ahead and open up my computer once again. We'll see if this looks any different. Right off the bat, it kind of looks exactly as it did before. It's still identifying itself as Windows NT version 4.0 build 1057, which is quite interesting. But yes, the Explorer does look pretty much exactly as it did in the previous version of NewShell. The only major difference that I'm noticing is this new briefcase icon. Obviously, like I said, you could customize the start menu if you wanted to, just like you can in Windows 95. We can remove items from it. Say we don't want the accessories folder, we can let's actually not do that, because I don't want to actually send any of the contents to the recycle bin. But yes, you do have the ability to actually customize it. And yeah, even in the command prompt here, it's still identifying itself as Windows NT version 4.0. So we're going to go ahead and actually run the same command to actually uninstall NewShell, and we're going to reboot once again. So yes, that was a very, very brief look at NewShell. So guys, there you have it. That is actually installing Windows NT version 3.51 here on the famous $5 Windows 98 PC, and actually taking a look at the two released versions of NewShell. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, definitely be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to get subscribed down below and turn on those channel notifications if you haven't already to get notified whenever I upload a new video, which I do multiple times per week here on this channel. And if you guys have any video suggestions, comments, or questions for me, be sure to leave those down below. And as always, guys, I just want to thank you all so much for watching and for your continued support here on the channel, and I will see you all in the next video.